he is my foundation. And I think that that's what changed me, was I knew my identity was in Christ. Don't let people label you or try to define you, but only God can, because he made you. So at Baptized California, I think it'll be massive. Last year, we had about 20,000 come, 20 to 25,000 come, and then we had 12,000 baptized.
If you're thinking about it, do it. There's nothing else to think about, because I'm telling you how magical for me.
I've seen the power of prayer. I've seen what it does in my personal life, and prayer is our line to God, and prayer should be our first response, not our last resort. It's powerful. I struggled with just, trying to fit that mold and perfectionism, but God completely set me free from that.
Welcome back, you guys, to Pain to Power, to another episode. I'm so excited for this next guest. But before we get started, please remember to like, subscribe, comment, all the things, and your 5-star reviews really help get the messages out there. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. And now, without further ado, I would like to introduce our new guest. She is an inspiring leader and co-founder of Oceans Church in South Orange County, a thriving community of faith that recently celebrated its 6th anniversary alongside her husband, Pastor Mark. I probably already gave it away. She served as a youth and young adult pastors for over 15 years at Generation Church in Boise, Idaho, where they saw over 18,000 young people come to know Jesus and witnessed countless miracles. A devoted wife of 19 years and proud mom to 2 daughters, Kenzie and Chloe. She is also the host of Collective Talk, a podcast that empowers listeners to live out their God-given purpose. With a heart to see lives transformed and communities impacted, she passionately fosters environments where both believers and skeptics can encounter the tangible presence of God. Please welcome my friend and Pastor Rachelle Francey.
Yay! What an intro. I'm so glad to be here. I need to learn from the best here. I'm like, I do a podcast and your intro, man, I was like, who is this person? No. I'm so honored to be on the show.
Thank you for coming.
Yes, thanks for having me.
I don't even know where to start. I'm just so excited that you're here.
Oh.
And the fact that you're just so humble, very humble, but you give and you just want to help everyone, and you give everyone your time, and you take the time to say hi and hug. And I admire you so much. And especially knowing your story, which we're going to totally get into, and I'm so excited. Being raised in a church,
Yes.
being a pastor's daughter, and living in that world. And I've heard from several pastors that it's actually really hard. You would think you would have it good and have it all because, just because you're a pastor's daughter. But I don't know. I don't know if that was the case for you, but you're just an amazing woman.
Oh,
and I'm
so
just so
kind.
honored that you're here and that we're building our relationship. And
I know. I'm so glad to know you. Yes, I grew up as a pastor's kid. And PK, for some of you, maybe some of your listeners, I don't meet a lot of pastors' kids, but I grew up, and it was amazing because I learned faith. I learned, the beauty of God's presence and how much God loved me. But I struggled with perfectionism because a lot of times people tried to put you need to measure up to this.
Mhm.
So they tried to put me in a certain mold. So I struggled big time with that. And I was a people pleaser. And so I was like, I want them to like me, and so I struggled with that. But God truly set me free through forgiveness. My parents were huge on forgiveness.
Yeah.
And they taught me the power of that. And forgiveness isn't changing your past, but it is enlarging your future. And so I thought that was beautiful. And they're like, Rachelle, those people did hurt you. They did speak words over you or tried to say that you weren't going to measure up, that you can't be a leader, or you have to be perfect to fit this mold and to be a pastor's kid. But I truly learned the power of forgiveness through being a pastor's kid, which was amazing. And I learned through that whole process that my identity isn't in what people label me, but only God can define me. And so I think when I released that forgiveness, it wasn't until after I released that forgiveness, the words, there was hurtful words. I mean, I could say it and it would be like shock you, the things people said. But it wasn't until I released that to God. It wasn't like I was condoning what they did was okay, but it was releasing that forgiveness. And after that, God set me free. And then I'm so grateful for that. Yeah. But that was my journey. I love God. I love his church. I love his presence. But I struggled with just, trying to fit that mold and perfectionism. But God completely set me free from that.
Yeah. So to get out of that, because I know a lot of women, especially women, guys, you too, really do struggle with people pleasing. And I didn't realize how much it really is something that does hold you back from so many things in life, from your potential. And it comes from a deep rooted, I don't like to use the word, but it's trauma. How were you able to, and I know you said forgiveness and being in God's presence, of course that helps because he transforms our hearts, but what advice could you give to anyone listening right now that is just really struggling with that?
Yeah. Well, that's a great question. I think that, if you know your identity, I think that was the key. I didn't know my identity. I just relied on what people told me. And so I think until you know who you are, I think that that's the key to life. I think so many people there's an identity crisis, and so many people are trying to label me. Who am I? And I think it wasn't until I knew what God said about me. And that's what really impacted me and changed me. It wasn't until I had that foundation, like Jesus, he is my foundation. And I think that that's what changed me was I knew my identity was in Christ. And obviously I'm a Christian.
Yeah.
So I believe that. And I believe that it wasn't until I'm like, okay, only God can define me, not people. And I always told youth, Mark and I led youth ministry for years. And a lot of young people struggle with their identity, like knowing who they are, And so I would always tell them, labels are fables. People will always try to say you're not going to amount to this, or you're this, or they'll try to label you, but only God can define you. So I think that's one thing I would say to the listeners is don't let people label you or try to define you, but only God can, because he made you.
So you were married with Pastor Mark Francey for 19 years. You guys served for 15 in the youth. Can you help me with timelines? So you guys were how old? How did you guys meet? Like I got to know this story.
Yes. I'm not good with timeline, but I think that Mark's really good with like dates and all that stuff. But we were married. So I'm 5 years older than him.
Oh.
And so that was a whole thing. And so 5 years older than him, we married. He was 20 or 21 and I was 26. So that's when we were married.
Oh, oh my gosh, you guys were young. See, I've heard bits and pieces from him. Is it preaching?
Yeah, preaching. Yeah.
Yes. So I hear bits and pieces, but I've never actually heard your guys' story.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
yeah.
Yes.
So this is exciting.
It's so amazing. Yes.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So he was 21. You were 26. You guys were obviously very young. Did your dad like him? Like, I gotta know.
Okay, no. I mean, my dad didn't know him. So he moved from California. So he was a California boy till he was 19. Then his parents got divorced. So he felt like he wanted to, he actually visited our church in Idaho. Okay. And I didn't meet him yet, but his dad made him go to our youth camp at church, just made him go. So he went, had like a God encounter. And then he like felt God at that camp say, you're going to move to Idaho, live with your dad, who he didn't really like. So he's like, God, why are you telling me to move to Idaho to live with my dad? You know, his parents got divorced. It wasn't a good divorce.
Yeah.
And so he just listened to what God said to him. So he moved to Idaho. And that's kind of how we met, was at church. And it was really cute because I was actually a teacher and we had like an intern program at our church. And I was one of his teachers. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this boy is really into my class. Yeah, at that time, that's what I thought of him because he was younger. And so I'm like, wow, he's really into my class. And my sister's like, Rachelle.
He was into you.
Yes, he was into you. I'm like, no, he's not. He's just Mark. He's really friendly with a lot of people. I mean, you know, Mark, he's very friendly.
Yes.
So I'm like, no, he's just, but she's like, no, he likes you. So it was funny because I think within a month after that, he got my number somehow and was asking me questions about the homework. And I'm like, wow, he really is into my class. But he went silent for a second and he's like, Rachelle, he goes, I have to ask you something or tell you something. And I'm like, oh no, what is he going to say? And it went quiet for a little bit and he got really nervous and he's like, I just have to tell you that I have feelings for you. And then I went silent. I'm like, what do I say? Because I didn't know him. I didn't really think of him that way.
Oh.
And because I didn't know him and he was younger, I wasn't thinking, you know. So anyways, I said, Mark, I really think you're an incredible guy, but I just would love to just be friends. And he said, well, I have enough friends, and hung up the phone.
No.
Yes. And ignored me for months.
No.
Yes. And then in front of people at church, I'd say, hi, Mark, how are you doing? And he was like, just ignored me. And then my brother started mentoring him. And then he started working in our youth program. And that's where I worked, was our youth. And so we worked with high school ministries, college ministries. And it wasn't until my brother started mentoring him, I got to know him better. I'm like, wow, he is an amazing guy. He had such he started this junior high ministry, and it was a campus ministry. And he went from 5 kids in a room to, they went to the gym and had 600 to 700 kids coming and getting, it was really cool.
Wow.
So he had a call in his life from when he was younger. But I got to know him and I started liking him later. It wasn't until maybe 2 years after that.
Okay.
So, and that's when we started liking each other and we fell in love when I got to know him.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, 5 years isn't that bad,
Yeah.
And then we fell in love and the rest is history. So.
Okay. So now that leads me, I'm curious because obviously he got all upset. He hung up the phone. I have enough friends. That is so funny. So obviously your brother started mentoring him. I'm assuming within that time he got humbled.
Yes.
So how did you guys rekindle, or not rekindle, but reconnect and decide to move forward more than friends? Who was the one? Were you hey, so I've been thinking, you know what I mean?
Yeah. It actually was maybe a year after that, I went to this conference and because I got to know him more after that. And I started being, nice, trying to reach out to him, be nice to him, because we had to work together in youth ministry. So he had to talk to me because we were working together. And so it wasn't until we started working together that I was like, oh my gosh, I really like him. He could kind of tell that I was starting to like him back.
Okay.
And have feelings for him.
Was he weird at first though?
Yeah.
Okay. So you both kind of had to warm up to each other.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
That is so interesting.
Yes. Isn't that funny? So when he says that I stalked him at church on Sundays, it was the opposite.
And because he said that multiple times, I'm like, something tells me it was the opposite.
Yes. And I think another story that he tells on Sundays sometimes that I think is so cute, and we still talk about it till this day, and I love him for it, but was my birthday. And I think it was before he started, I knew that he had called me and told me he had feelings for me. He came to my birthday party uninvited at a restaurant, and he brought a big life-sized bear, those big life-sized bears. And he brought that, and my sister looks at me and says, he likes you. He's into you. But we still had that bear forever. And then when we moved, I don't know what happened to it. I think it's I don't know. So I'm so sad about it. But he still tells that story in his sermons. So
that is
yeah.
so sweet. Oh my gosh. So 19 years of being married. Obviously, the center of your guys' marriage is God. But what would you say is, I mean, I guess it could be a lot of different answers, but the top few things that you could say to, because I haven't had anyone on my show yet that's been married for 19 years. And of course, as a single mother,
Yeah.
I would love to be married one day. And so I would love to hear from you for the ones that are married that listen to my show. What is the secret? What is
Yeah.
besides, of course, having God as your center?
Yes. Yeah, I think that's such a great question. So I think the things that we've learned, and we've learned so much through being married for 19
Mhm.
years, is the number one thing that I think when the first year of marriage, we learned, the Bible talks about this, don't let the sun go down on your wrath. And it was interesting because the first year we would get in fights because you're getting used to, you're used to being single. And then
Mhm.
when you come together, it's hard to, you're both different and
Yeah.
unique and you have different personalities. And so bringing those two together, it's like interesting in the first year. And so we learned, if we are angry, usually we would fight. Like if we had fights, it would be at night when we're tired.
Mm.
And he came up with this phrase that I always loved. He's like blue skies. He would say blue skies. And that meant just that we'll talk about it when we're not as tired the next day. And for some
Mm.
reason, it just clicked with us.
Mm.
But the Bible talks about don't let the sun go down in your wrath. So the devil doesn't have a foothold in your life. And I truly believe that is true because one year in our first year of marriage, we got in a fight. And I think it was something so silly.
Uh-huh.
And we went to bed. We didn't apologize. We didn't talk it through. And then that night, I'm sorry, it was 2 years into our marriage because we had our daughter, Kenzie. And Kenzie woke up. She was young. She was a little baby. And she was crying because she had, maybe she was 1 at the time, but she was just crying. And we could tell she was having nightmares. So it was kind of interesting. And I feel like when you when you let the enemy come in through just
Oh,
arguments, the enemy comes, I feel like in your household.
yeah.
And so we learned that is not to let the sun go down on your wrath. I think the second thing that we learned was forgiveness, which I've talked
Mm.
about, and is learning to forgive quickly. And we
Mm.
always try to race like who is the first to say they're sorry, right? And
Mm.
that's really helped us. Like, I feel like I'm better, but maybe he is. No, he'll say he's better at it, and maybe he is.
I'll
But
get him on the show, see what he
yeah,
says.
yeah, have him on, and then he'll probably say he is. But I think forgiveness is a key too. And then I
Quickly.
think showing love to one another, keep dating. We've been
Mm.
married for 19 years. We have a consistent date night that we do throughout the week. Every week we'll have a date and we'll make sure that we are continually loving each other,
Mm.
letting each other know how much the things that we love about one another.
Yeah.
And so those are things that we do, the 3 things that I think that has kept our marriage really strong.
Yeah.
And, but consistently dating one another, forgiving, and don't letting the sun go down on your wrath. Those are 3 things I would
Yeah.
say.
That's really good because I have a lot of quite a few friends that are either hit their 10 year or is going to hit their 10 year, and it seems to be some sort of like it's always that 10-year mark where they're just like, "Oh, we've grown apart." And I'm just like, I can't help them because I have no experience. And unfortunately, both my parents are divorced, and I've never seen or witnessed a healthy marriage.
Mm.
So I don't know. So this is really good to know, even for myself. But wow, okay. That's really good. That's really good. Um, so how long did you guys date before you got married? Because I know Christians tend to marry very quick.
Yes, yes. So we dated, I think, for not very long, maybe not even a year. So I think it was like 8 months. And then my dad was like, are you sure this guy's the one?
He was questioning?
Yeah. Because he didn't know him as well. My brother did.
Okay.
And so then I think it was a couple months. He's like, how about you guys wait a little bit? My parents were incredible parents.
Yeah.
They've been married for, oh my gosh, I feel like it's 40 something years. They are just amazing. They love each other to this day. So I had such a godly example, but he's like, just, wait a couple months and see if you feel like he still is the one. And so we did that. Mark did that. And, and then my dad got to know him more.
Yeah.
And then really started really liking Mark. And then after a couple months, we started dating again. And then he proposed. Yeah. Yeah.
That's beautiful. I love that. Was there I'm sure there's several moments, but was there the moment where he is the one?
Yeah. I think it was in Toronto. I went to a conference and I don't know what it was. I just felt like in my prayer time that morning, which I always love to pray in the morning, but God really did speak to me when I was reading the word, and I don't remember what passage I was reading in the Bible, but I just felt like that, just a peace come over me. And I felt like, and I saw just a picture of me and Mark being married. And so it was a beautiful, kind of like a picture of our
God
future.
Told you.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so, and I wouldn't suggest, God doesn't, speak to everybody, because some girls, I feel like in our youth ministry, they said that God spoke to them about that they're going to marry this guy. And I'm like, they never got married. So I'm like, but God really did show me that he was the one for me. So yeah.
Wow. That's so good.
Yeah.
I have heard that several times actually, that you allow God to choose your husband or wife, but then it's sometimes that's not God.
Yeah. You're like,
so,
yeah.
So it's important to keep being in the word, keep, just asking him to make his voice stronger so that you just know without a doubt that it is him. But also you brought up a great point, is that peace that comes over you, that it's God and it's just not your flesh thinking or taking over.
Right.
So that's really good. So I want to talk a little bit about, because you mentioned prayer in the morning, and when you said it, it was very passionate.
Yes.
So I love that. So can you tell us a little bit about your morning prayer routine, night routine even, or do you stop in the middle of the day? I know I could get better with my prayer life.
Yeah.
So I'm going to be taking notes.
Well, I just love prayer. And I think it was exemplified through my parents. They loved to pray. My mom would put us to bed praying, and my dad would wake up. He would be in the morning praying on his knees. So I think that was just my life. And so I gleaned that as a young girl. But they always taught me that, prayer is our line to God, and prayer should be our first response, not our last resort. And so prayer is powerful. And I pray in the mornings because it says in the Bible, when you wake up, that should be your first thing. Yeah. To pray. And so that's what I do in the morning. I will spend an hour praying before I get my daughter up and I take her to school. And I just wait on him and I pray, and prayer is powerful. And I think Matthew 6:33, it says, seek first the kingdom and his righteousness, and all these things shall be added unto you. That seek in the Bible, in the Hebrew, actually means to search. So in Matthew 7:7 also, it talks about ask and it will be given to you, seek, and that is also search, and knock and the door will be open. So when you are praying, you're actually searching, you're knocking, you're asking, you're searching for God, for his presence. And so I think that's a beautiful example. And there's powerful throughout scripture, Hannah in the Bible, she prayed, she was barren, she couldn't have kids, and she was desperate. And she asked God, would you hear my prayer? I want a child. And God answered her prayer, because prayer is powerful. And he heard her prayer, and he gave her a son, and his name was Samuel. And he was one of the most incredible prophets in the Bible. And there was also, Hezekiah. He was told that he was going to die in the Bible. And God gave him 15 more years to live, because he asked God, I need, I want to live longer. And he gave him 15 more years. There's also, lastly, a guy in the Bible that I love to read his stories is Solomon. He asked God for wisdom. He didn't ask for riches or honor, but God asked him, you could ask me of anything. And he asked for wisdom to serve people well. And I just love that. I think that those are powerful stories of prayer, but also there's personal stories. There's people in our church that I've seen. There was a man knocking on death's door. His name was Iman. And Mark went over to their house, and the mom asked him to come pray for them because the dad was dying. He was in the hospital. The doctor said he's going to die the next morning. So come say your goodbyes. So he had 2 daughters and a wife. And when Mark walked into that, we didn't really know them at the time. Their girls went to our camp. So someone told us about him. So Mark went over and prayed for them. And when he first walked into the house, there was pictures of his beautiful girls on the hallway right as he walked in. And we have 2 girls, so it just caught him. It went to the very core of him, and he's like, God, I don't want to see this man die. Would you help him live? So he asked Molly if he could pray that he would not die but live. And she said yes, and broke down, fell to her knees and said, oh my goodness, you're the first. There was a priest that came in that was basically saying that he wasn't going to live. And Mark was the only one that came in and, spoke life. And so they prayed in that moment. And it was literally within less than 24 hours, that next morning, the doctor says, I don't know what happened. There was a turn of events. And Iman's not going to die anymore. His lungs were all black. He says, but I've never seen this in my medical history, but he's going to live. And so, and Iman goes to our church to this day. And it's just amazing. His 2 beautiful girls and his wife, Molly. And so that's a beautiful story. That's why I love prayer, because I know that prayer works and prayer is powerful. And it's our lifeline. And so I think it always should be our first response, not our last resort. Yeah. And so I've seen the power of prayer. I've seen what it does in my personal life. And so maybe some of your listeners here have never prayed before. And it's powerful. If maybe you don't even know God, but if you just come and you just ask God, okay, God, I want to know you. I want to. And talking like how we're talking today, that's basically what you do when you pray. You just talk to God. Yeah. And but I love prayer. Yes,
that's so good. I remember the beginning of my journey, I was like, I don't know how to pray, but hey,
yes. That's how I started
and then
too.
It just grows from there. And then just being around the church and being rooted and being in small groups, you start hearing how people are praying, and then you just learn and you ask the Holy Spirit and you ask God, teach me how to pray, because I don't know what I'm doing. Yeah. But it was really helpful because Pastor Mark spoke about prayer and how to pray. I think there's a lot of talk that like there's a certain way that you pray. I wouldn't necessarily, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, I wouldn't necessarily say there's a wrong or right way, but there's definitely like some sort of blueprint. So when you pray, it shouldn't right away be asking him for stuff. Right. Mm-hmm. So it should always start with thanksgiving and worship and praising him. Yes. So, but I want the listeners to hear you and explaining that, because we have a tendency, and I'm still learning too. And I recently just taught on my Bible study about prayer and interceding. And that was the part where I'm like, ooh, I have not been interceding. I have been not. Anyways, so I'll let you speak more on that, about how, I don't know, the best way you should pray.
Yeah. I think for like, there's so many different levels, I think too, like when you first start, I think it's just like talking to God. Maybe you've never started, and just talk to him like how we're talking. And then I think Thanksgiving is huge. I love that you said that. It says, come into his gates with thanksgiving and into his courts with praise. I think that is the key to really entering into his presence, and then you just feel God. You feel a peace is when you begin to thank God for what he's done. And maybe he hasn't, maybe you felt like you've been through trials or situations where it's not been easy. But I'm telling you, when you pray and you begin to thank God for maybe the things that, you have a roof over your head, or maybe you have a car that you can drive, or whatever it is, when you begin to thank God, that's when I really do believe that God unlocks miracles, when you begin to thank God. But I tend to like to, every morning, this is what I do, my routine is I'll just wait on him for a little bit. I'll wait on him and I'll begin to ask God for, maybe things that he wants me to pray through that day. But then I'll walk through the Lord's Prayer. And you don't have to do that. That's just something that I do. Our Father, which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. I will basically, because our Father, it starts out with God, right? We just honor him, thank him. And that's what you're doing. And it says, give us this day our daily bread. And so if there's anything that you are in need of that day, God will give that to you. And I pray that also for my friends and my family and all the people in our church, that if they're in need of something, that God would give them what they need. And then I'll ask, forgiveness. If there's anything in my heart that I need to, maybe I did something knowing or unknowing. And I think purity in prayer is key too. And so then I'll put on the armor. In Ephesians 6, it talks about putting on the full armor of God.
I need to do that.
Yeah. And I teach my girls that. It's so cute. Every morning, Chloe and Kenzie, they put on their armor. Every day they go to it says the helmet of salvation, breastplate of righteousness. And maybe some of you that have been to Bible class or something, they teach you that. But I have learned that when I don't put on my armor every day, I feel like naked in a sense. It's like,
so it is every day.
Yeah, I do it every day.
I need to do that.
Yeah. Okay. And then I pray Psalms 91 round about my family. It talks about he who dwells in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty. I will say of the Lord, he is my refuge and my strength, my God, in him will I trust. So I'll pray that scripture over my family, that he'll protect us, he'll guard us, he'll keep us safe. And those are just things, but sometimes I don't always follow that.
Yeah.
But that's just a guide. You don't have to be a religious person and do that every day. But that's something that helps me and guides me through my prayer time.
That's really good.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm going to be adding that one right there. Especially with the season I'm walking into. I'm going to need all the armor. Well, thank you for sharing that. So, okay, that's your morning routine. Night. So you always pray at night before you go to bed.
Yeah.
I haven't been very good at that.
Yeah. Well, that I think is key too, because you begin your day with God and you end your day with God. And so I think that's key.
Thank you.
That's a prayer. That's
I love
good.
You. Thank you.
Then
knock out.
That's perfect. I feel like most people do that. I'm just, I'm a pastor. So I would do more, but my husband and I actually tend to pray together.
Yeah.
So, you've heard that saying, couples that pray together, stay together. So I think that's another thing that why we've because we really pray together most nights, not all nights, but we love to pray together.
Yeah, that's so good. Did you, because I know that there was some sort of you did not want to start a church.
No.
And then God's like, you thought.
Yeah.
Can you kind of explain about that whole story about you and P. Mark having that vision, knowing it was from God? And I think P. Mark had it first and then you had it. You're like, no, we said we weren't going to do this. And then God spoke to you and you're like, okay, we're doing this.
Yeah.
Can you kind of open up about that story? Because that is such a good story.
Yeah. Well, so before we got married, I told him, hey, the two things we don't want to do is I don't want to become a lead pastor and I don't want to start a church. And that's what I told him. I said, this is you got to make a pact with me. This is, I don't want to do that. And so he's like, okay. And then it wasn't until a year into our marriage that maybe less than that, he was like, hey, have you read Purpose Driven Life by Rick Warren? And I said, yeah, I've already read that. Well, he had read that book And in that book, Rick Warren, he's a pastor here in California. He started Saddleback Church, and he talks about his journey and how they started their church and they planted their church. And so Mark just had this like this is what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to move to California, start a church, but he's like, I already told Rachelle we're not going to start a church, right?
Yeah.
And so he just said, hey, I just really feel like you're supposed to read this book. And then he kind of mumbled under his breath, like, I think we're supposed to start a church. I said, what? I already told you. You know what I went through, as a pastor's kid. And it took me a lot of years to forgive and to work on all of that stuff. And I don't know if I can go through that again, right? So he's like, just read it. All I'm asking is you just read it. So then I read it, and God really got a hold of my heart.
Wow.
And he's like, Rachelle, are you going to be comfortable and just do, because I feel like the Western civilization, we all love comfort. We all love comfort. We don't want to do anything out of our comfort zones. And so me particularly, I was like, Idaho is perfect. It's like a great place to live, to raise your kids. And we lived in a great neighborhood. Yeah. And I'm like, I just want to be comfortable, live here in Idaho for the rest of my life. But God said, do you want to be comfortable, or do you want to do what I've called you to do?
Wow.
And so in that moment, I'm like, okay, God, I'm going to be obedient. And you never know what's on the other side of your obedience. And so it was crazy. In that moment, I'm like, okay, God, I surrender. And when I surrendered, that's when I'm like, okay, God, I felt like freedom came in that moment when I surrendered. Wow. And I knew that we're supposed to move to California. And then I told him, and we both started like, oh my gosh, this is it. We just knew it was God.
Wow.
So yeah, that's kind of the story behind that. And then we moved to California, started Oceans Church, and we've lived here for 6 years now. The church is 6 years old, and it's just amazing what God is doing in Oceans Church and through Baptize California, Baptize America now coming.
Yes.
And so Mark and I, our heart has always been, and Mark will always say this, and this is truly our heart, that strength that God gives you is not for status, but it's for service. And so that's something that we've tried to apply in our everyday life through when we served in youth ministry in Idaho. And then now when we're serving here in California, we want to serve people. And God gives you strengths and giftings, but not for status, but to serve people, to love people. And so that's something that we love to do. But
yes,
yeah,
clearly, clearly, we all feel it. I'm not too familiar with the process of how churches are started, how long it takes, but I've only been there for a year and a half. September 2023.
Okay.
So yeah. Oh wow, not that long.
Wow.
So much has happened. Oh my gosh. And I was going to different churches trying to find a church, and because I just knew I had to. I still was like kind of like I knew, like I was like, okay, I want to have a relationship with God, and then I was like 1 foot out. Anyways, just like any other new believers, by the way, I think that's pretty normal.
Yes.
You would say. Okay. So for those that are listening or watching, don't get discouraged, because I feel like all of us go through it. She's nodding her head, so I think she agrees. So don't get discouraged. Just surround yourself with the right people, the right church. You have to date a few churches, and that's what I did. And there were some that I went to, and I won't name them, but they were lower energy and older people. And I'm like, this is not for me. And I actually did grow up at Saddleback Church.
Oh, you did?
With my parents. I had, we went every Sunday, but that was pretty much it. It was, lukewarm. But so I knew Rick Warren before it was Disneyland. But I didn't know anything. I was closed off and just was like, yeah, whatever. But when I went to Oceans Church for the first time, I didn't know what I was feeling, but what I felt was like warmth, and like I cried.
Oh.
And I was just like, what is this? And I'm like, I think this is it. And I also love the fact that there was like people my age.
Yeah. Not,
so that was helpful.
Not all older people. Yeah.
And the energy was high. There's kids running around and I'm just like, I really like this energy. So I'm just going to keep showing up. And now you will always find me third row center.
Yes, which I love.
Yes. And I would be in the first row of, but that goes to the others or the pastor's children, family
staff
and staff and stuff like that. Otherwise I would be there.
Yeah.
But 6 years and seeing from the tents to where we're at now and where you guys are building, I would say that first of all, of course it's God, because the growth, like every time I talk about Oceans Church, people, I heard of that one. I've heard of that church.
Wow.
Everyone knows Oceans Church.
No way. Wow.
Yes, it's beautiful and it's growing so fast. And we feel, look, you're on my show. You're not too busy for me. Like you make time for people and you care. And I just remember, oh my gosh, you and Pastor Mark took us to the green room, me and Jordan and my family, and prayed over us.
I remember that.
And I was just, I was a wreck because I was struggling. And then the enemy took hold of my son and you guys prayed over him, which he's good now.
Yes.
Oh my gosh. Praise God.
Yeah.
So anyways, I felt called to share that because Oceans has changed me. It really, I'm going to cry.
Oh,
it has. And it's just, I don't know. I love you guys so much. And that's why I want to be involved as much as possible and just whatever I can do. So anyways, I'm here. Rachel, you have my number. I'm here. I know you're busy,
making me cry too, Kayla. Oh my gosh.
I really do. And anyways, okay. So since you brought it up about Baptize California, Baptize America,
yes.
I definitely want to talk about that.
Yeah.
Also, I could be wrong, but did P. Mark mention that he was inspired by that movie, Jesus Revolution?
Yes.
I watched that recently.
Yeah, isn't that amazing?
Oh my gosh. Okay, so I have questions. So I watched the movie and oh my gosh. So he was inspired by that. Is he going to be involved with that pastor? Is that pastor still around?
Greg Laurie. Yeah, he's amazing. He does, all those harvest crusades and all of that.
Okay.
In the stadium. Greg Laurie is like just amazing, and he's our hero. He's the hero in the faith, and he lives here in California and is a pastor, and he's amazing. Yes. So that was a story of his life. And
wow.
But yeah, the funny thing is we didn't know that Mark actually planned Baptize California because God just gave him this beautiful vision of baptizing California. And so we first went to Pirates Cove, where that movie was filmed, where the Jesus People movement in the 70s, 60s and 70s.
Before he got the vision.
Before he got the vision, he didn't see that movie first, but he read a news article that talked about how many people got baptized at Pirates Cove. And then he was reading articles again about the Jesus People movement. But he was inspired by that movie, but it wasn't, it was after he wanted to do the Baptize California. So it was actually a God setup because we were doing Baptize Orange County, and we did it at Pirates Cove. But it was just a couple months, I think it was 2 months after the movie released.
Oh.
And so people wanted to come to Pirates Cove because they saw the movie, and we were doing a baptism because we already planned it for like a whole year.
Yeah.
So that was total God setup.
Wow.
We didn't know that movie was coming out, but then when we saw it, we actually rented 2 theaters and we watched that film, and we knew we're about ready to do that same baptism at that same beach. It was crazy. So it was totally a God setup.
Yes.
So, yeah.
So are you, okay, first of all, do you know if it's Greg, right?
Greg, Pastor Greg.
Do you know if he's Pastor Greg? Do you know if he still does that to this day?
Yeah, they actually did a baptism after our church.
Okay.
So after we did Pirates Cove, they had a team reach out to our team and asked us questions about how we did it and how so many got baptized. And we just told them what we did, and they did an incredible baptism. And I think they did a little bit more than us at that Pirates Cove. And so we were so excited about that.
Are you guys going to come together? Are we allowed to talk about this?
Yeah, I mean, we want to. We've reached out, and so I think we would love to eventually, because he's our hero. We love him.
Yeah, Baptize America.
Yeah,
because when I was watching that, I was like, oh, wait.
Yeah.
If they're not already collaborating on this,
yes,
they need to.
Yes.
So I'm telling you, you need to. It's my idea.
Just kidding. We want that too. Yes.
Wow, that is amazing. That is so beautiful. That movie, if you guys haven't watched it, go watch it. It's on Netflix. It was so inspiring, and
yeah, it was so good. I know.
This is so good.
I cried throughout the whole. It just reminded me of our church too, because we were in tents too at the time.
Yes.
And then because they were meeting in tents for a little bit, and then Pirates Cove and all that. It's beautiful, and it's great acting, and it's really good. It's a really good program. Yeah. So
tell me more about Baptize America. Do we? I guess it's hard to say because you're inviting. Not inviting. Oh my gosh. I don't even know how it works. You're just spreading the word, and whoever can come. Right. Yeah. So it's churches from all over the country.
Yes.
Okay. So tell me more about
so we're actually doing, and I need the dates from Rachel. But I think it's Rachel's May 3rd. May 3rd, we're actually doing Baptize California. And so it's specifically for California. It's at the same beach that we did last year.
Okay.
So in Huntington. Okay. And so May 3rd will be a massive baptism. We have musical artists. And so that's beautiful.
Okay.
And then we have Baptize America, which launches all of America June 8th. And so we're doing that June 8th.
That's right.
And so every church in America could be a part of that. I think currently we have about, 35 states represented. So we are looking for more states. We want all of the states to be represented in America, which is quite the task, but it's just amazing. The body of Christ coming together. Different denominations are wanting to, be a part of this movement. And it's just exciting so if you're watching, you go to a church, you can sign up to get baptized. Baptize California on May 3rd or June 8th. You can also be a part. You can go to baptize. Is it baptizeamerica.com? Baptize.org.
Okay.
And you can go on that, you can sign up to get baptized, or you could find a church in your area that is basically, it'll show a map, and you could click on where you're at, and it'll show you if there's a church a part of this baptism day.
Perfect.
Yeah.
How many people do you expect or anticipate?
Yeah, so at Baptize California, I think it'll be massive. Last year, we had about 20,000 come, 20 to 25,000 come, and then we had 12,000 baptized. So there was actually 6,000 that got baptized on the beach at Huntington, and then there was 6,000 within the churches throughout the whole state of California that partnered with us that day, on the same day, and they all got baptized too. So there was 6,000 more, so 12,000 altogether that got baptized.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's for Baptize America, you think it'll probably be 3 times the amount?
Yes, there'll be a lot.
How will that work being in a public place with that many people?
Yeah. So Baptize America is different because it's being held at churches, all the different churches that are hosting it. So we call them host churches.
Oh, I thought it was going to be on the beach.
No, well, they can. If a church wants to do it at a beach or a lake, they can do that. But a lot of the churches will just be doing it from their church.
Okay,
and so if you want to become a host church, you can, if you're watching this, and you can become a host church. You could ask your pastor if they would like to become a host church. And then basically on Pentecost Sunday, June 8th, all over America, everybody will be baptizing and encouraging people. And we're doing this mass marketing campaign that will get people that maybe have never been baptized before, or they fell away from God. And we're targeting those people. And then we're asking them to find a church. So maybe some people have never been to church. And they can click on that map and they can sign up at a church that maybe they've never been to before.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Can you speak to the person that wants to get baptized? Because what I've been finding, I've helped. I don't want to take credit because it's all Jesus, but I've helped quite a few people get baptized on their own, and I've noticed that a lot of people struggle with, well, I'm not ready because I have so much stuff of me I need to work on. And I'm like, no. Anyways, what would you say to that person that's thinking about getting baptized, wants to get baptized, but doesn't feel ready?
Yeah.
Like, what would you say to that person?
Yeah, that's such a great question. Well, I think my husband always says this, you don't, a lot of people feel like they're not good enough to get baptized, or they're not ready, and so I think, you don't wash off in the sink before you get in the shower, right? I think a lot of times people will think, oh man, I need to get myself clean before I get baptized. But baptism is identifying with Christ's death, burial, and resurrection. And when you go under those waters, you come out, you're dying to your old self, to the things that are holding you bound, or maybe the things that you're struggling with that you can't seem to get free from. And when you go under those waters, you're identifying with Christ's death and his burial, but then also his resurrection. When you come out of the waters, you're a new person. You're free from all of the old stuff. The old stuff is gone and done away with. And then the Bible talks about you've become new. And so that's why I think baptism is so beautiful.
Wow.
And so, again, you don't have to, people don't wash off in the sink to get into the shower, right? You just get into the shower. And so the same with baptism, you don't have to get cleaned before you go into the waters of baptism. Because when you go under those waters, you come out a new person. So,
you do. And I can testify to that because, again, I started going to Ocean September 2023. I didn't get baptized until August 2024. And that was on the missions trip to the Philippines.
Oh, that's right.
Yes. But the thing is that I was called to do it. There was something pushing me and telling me. I started seeing signs. Anyways, I'll talk about that another day, you guys. But I was like, I don't know what this is, but something's telling me I need to get baptized here.
Wow.
And I told my team and they baptized me. And I didn't understand the significance. I didn't understand the power behind it. I'm like, okay, what is water going to do?
Yeah.
You guys, if you're thinking about it, do it. There's nothing else to think about, because I'm telling you how magical for me. I remember my eyes were closed. They dunked me out of the water. Even though my eyes were closed, I saw water. I saw it. And I'm like, what? And I came back up, and it was like this overwhelming sense of peace. And everything changed after that for me. Like, I can't explain it. You guys have to experience it for yourself. And that's might be what you need. And usually what you're trying to avoid is what you need. I've noticed that. But 5 weeks after, and I counted, that's when I got baptized by the Holy Spirit. And I know it has to do with the baptism. Yes. I know it does. It like activated something inside of me, and I've been on fire for Jesus ever since.
Oh, wow.
So you hear me? I'm talking to you. Okay. You too. So that's beautiful. So we have all the information, you guys. And of course, in the description, I'll put the websites and obviously yours to get in contact online and sign up and get that done. I really encourage everyone that is listening. And if you're watching my show, I already know, like, you're here for a reason. I'm telling you right now, go get baptized. So beautiful. Oh my gosh. Okay, we're almost done. I wish I could keep going. So two more questions. What is next for Oceans Church?
Man, there's just so much that God's already doing, and it's so amazing to watch, like we already talked about Baptize California, Baptize America, but just all the people that God is bringing into our church. And I think, our mission for our church, or our verse for our church is Habakkuk 2:14. For the earth will be filled with the knowledge of the glory of the Lord as the waters cover the sea. And so we love that verse because we just feel like a mandate to, bring God's presence or his awareness to people that don't know God. And so, and Mark has had a dream, actually a real God dream, that he felt like God showed him in the dream that we would have an oceans church on every major ocean in the world. So I feel like that's what's next.
Wow.
And God is raising us up to reach people in a lot of different nations and, in all of California, but in different nations as well. And so our heart is for nations and people. And we love to serve. We love to love people. And we know a lot of people have been through pain and through trauma and hurts. And God is raising up so many people like yourself, Kayla, to reach and impact so many people's lives. And so I'm so thankful for you. But that's what's next for Oceans Church.
That's amazing. Spoiler alert. Is that one of the reasons why Pastor Mark was in the Philippines?
Well, who knows? I mean, he loves the Philippines, and I feel like he had, that was one of the places that I felt like he said that he felt like we were going to start a campus there one day. So that would be amazing.
Oh my gosh, we need to talk soon.
Yeah.
As you know, I went to the Philippines with the Gracia mission, and we need to talk.
Yes, let's do.
Yeah, whatever I can do to help. Mexico's also been on my mind, on my heart.
Yeah.
I don't know what God has in store, but he keeps drawing me to Mexico, and I'm doing a lot more real estate business in San Diego.
Wow.
So he's bringing me down there. I don't know why yet, but this is the first time y'all are hearing this. It's 6 months later. Let's see what's going on. But okay, 2 last questions. What's like the final last message that you want to give to everyone watching?
Yeah, I think that God uses our pain, uses our trials and the things that we go through in life to make an impact in the world. And so many of us have gone through pain, have gone through trauma, have gone through trials, but God he wants us to impact the world through our story. And so our story is powerful. Our story makes a massive difference. And so I think that if you can realize that pain is not a punishment, but it's a promotion to what God has in store for you. And so a lot of times people want to bypass the pain, but God, he brings you through that pain to prepare you for all the things that God has in store for you. He doesn't cause the pain, but he helps you through the pain and promotes you to make a massive impact. And so I would just say for those listening, and find out what God has called you to do and do it with all your heart. And through the pain, through the things that you've been through, God is preparing you to promote you for the great things that God has in store for you. So I would just leave with that. And I would just say that through prayer, and you know how I love prayer, I think that it's never too late to pray. And so prayer should never be your last resort, but your first response. And I love prayer. And I think that that's our lifeline. And is it your steering wheel or is it your flat tire? And so I would just encourage everyone listening to try prayer out, to get to know God through prayer. And so, yeah, I would just say that.
Beautiful. I think you just answered my last question. What's your definition of pain? What does pain to power mean to you?
Oh, well, perfect. Yes. That's awesome.
That's good. I unless you want to add anything else, I think we can just end it there.
Yeah, just your pain. I think God wants to promote you and make an impact. So,
Amen.
Yeah.
I love that. Thank you so much, Pastor Rachelle.
Thank you. I'm so honored.
You guys, if you love this episode just as much as I did, make sure you like, subscribe, all the things, and I will see you at the next one.
Yay.